Hello, my video presentation is going to be on the Canada lynx, class Mammalia, subclass Theria, infraclass Eutheria, order Carnivora, family Felidae, and scientific name Lynx canadensis. So we're going to start with some basic characteristics and identification of the Canada lynx. As you can see in the picture, they have a very short tail and it's going to always have a black tip on it, which is, one of the dead giveaways that it's a Canada lynx. They have black tufts of fur on the tips of their ears, which looks like little horns, and that actually aids in hearing, and the Canada lynx has impeccable hearing. They have a really thick coat that's normally like a grayish tan color, and as you can see by the picture, they live in wet, very cold environments, so that coat keeps them dry and warm. They have large tufts of fur on their cheeks, and that makes their face look really broad, but that's also an identifiable characteristic of the Canada lynx. They have incredibly large paws that act as snowshoes for them when they're walking through the snow, and on average, they're going to be about 20 pounds. Moving right along to behavior. They are solitary animals, and interestingly enough, they are active at all times, during the day and at night, but their activity level increases pretty drastically at night. Their diet consists of snowshoe hares for the most part, and every 2 to 3 days they'll kill, at least one snowshoe hare. It's interesting because the hares and the lynx have a symbiotic relationship when it comes to their populations. They're going to fluctuate together, and there's this time lag between the hares and the lynx. So for example, if the hare population skyrockets, there will be a little bit of a lag, and then the lynx population will also skyrocket. And the same is true for when populations drop drastically. You'll see that time lag, and normally it's a year or two, in between one dropping and then the other dropping. They will have a mixed diet in the lower part of the Canada lynx range, which we're going to get into range on the next slide. But their diet's a little different in the lower 48. They will eat hares, grouse, squirrels, and even small rodents, because snowshoe hares are not as prevalent in the lower 48 as they are in Canada and Alaska. So to range, as you can see from the picture in the upper right hand corner, the red box, they are most common in Canada and Alaska, but do drop down a little bit into the lower 48, and according to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, they have been found and are normally only found in Washington, Maine, Montana, and Colorado. It inhabits deciduous and boreal forests in what's known as a transition zone. So it's where the boreal forest turns into deciduous forest as you're moving down from Canada and Alaska down through the U.S. And that's in their northeastern range. In the western part of the United States where they're found, they live in coniferous forests that have a subalpine climate. And a little bit more about their populations and range. So in Canada and Alaska, their populations are thriving and have never really had a problem keeping dense populations. However, in the southern population, so as you get into the lower United States, that's where their populations are seeing issues. And that's because their prey populations are being affected by development and human pressures and threats. Not to mention the lynx themselves are being affected by fragmentation, road development, and competition from other species that is pushed by things like road development, because then wolves and coyotes have access to previously unobtainable lynx habitat. And lynx make their dens in densely covered forests, and a lot of those forests that they prefer are being used for logging and development. So it's a bit of a problem. Reproduction for the lynx ties right into this. So like I said, they make their dens in dense forest, but they don't actually create a den. They use natural dens, such as a downed log or, divots in the ground where there's a lot of vegetative overgrowth. things like that. And when they have their young once a year after mating occurs in the winter months, they will hide their kittens away in really dense covered undergrowth, or like I said, logs, and that's where they keep them protected, and that's considered their den. And the young will stay with the mother for about a year. Males aren't really involved in the rearing process. And however many kittens they are going to have is dependent on food abundance, especially with snowshoe hares. And their kittens, the number of kittens can range from 1 to 5, and gestation is going to be 63 to 70 days. So, we're going to finish this off with some threats to the Canada lynx. So, like I said, their reproduction status is dependent on their food availability. So, like I said, like the time lag that we discussed earlier, and that's going to also depend on development. So, if the snowshoe hares populations are declining because of development, then there's not going to be as much food. So then the lynx aren't going to have as many babies. So then you have decreased population for the Canada lynx. So that's just kind of a general threat to the Canada lynx. But more specifically, in the 70s and 80s, trapping was a huge thing, and especially for the fur trade. And as you can see, the Canada lynx has beautiful fur, and they were, brought into the fur trade and exploited heavily. In 1991, organizations tried to get the species listed, but officials in the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service denied the petition because populations in Canada and Alaska were thriving, and they thought, well, clearly it's doing fine, but the lower United States populations are the ones that were really having trouble. So logging, recreational activities, development, hunting, all of that kind of stuff are the really big threats to the Canada lynx, and still are big threats today as development continues to grow, and they're losing the forests that they not only have their young in, but that they live in and thrive in. According to CITES, they are listed as Appendix 2, and in 2000, they were listed as threatened on the Endangered Species Act. So, progress is being made. Let's just keep working and hoping that their populations can recover. And that's all I have for the Canada lynx. I hope you enjoyed.